I would like to open the floor up really to anyone, any of the panelists or any of the attendees who want to participate, want to ask questions, want to make comments, give thoughts about what you heard, anything really. Thanks.
So I'd like to start. Thank you, Buzz. That was terrific. I just want to make one point about the coalition that we didn't emphasize yet, and that is the reason we're collecting data is to share data. And so all of our data is available. And so we encourage people within the coalition, people outside of the coalition, to send their requests for data for projects that they want to do with the data that we've collected to the executive committee, and we review them. Our default position is to say yes, and we really encourage that. And we've been very successful with that. And we want to promote that in a major way.
Yes, thanks, Joel. I think that's a good point. You're absolutely right. We didn't mention it this time. Last meeting, a year ago, we spent a whole session just on what data and resources we have available for sharing and the many ways to get access to that. I think you're probably right. We, in an effort to move to a new theme, we probably forgot that one very, very critical aspects. So just to briefly summarize, we have tons of data from patients. We have video recordings from almost all of them. We have blood samples, we have DNA samples. And these are all available to anyone, even people who are not part of the Dystonia Coalition. There is, on our website, there's a request form. All you got to do is fill it out, describe what you want to do with it. And as Joel said, the default answer is almost always yes. We only question people when we get a request that is exactly duplicating another request. And we just put those people in contacts because we don't want to instigate unknown competitions. But thanks, Joel, for bringing that up. Other questions or comments?
Why don't we address the question from Heather Parker about how patient advocacy groups can get involved? Kim responded to it through the chat, but I think it's worth pushing that a little bit more, because we, as you pointed out, and Janet and Kim pointed out, this is one of the great strengths of this particular program. So does Janet or Kim want to make a comment verbally about that, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We always encourage the participation of our PAGs, and there's many opportunities to get more involved. And we will be doing a follow-up email to all of our PAGs once this recording is available, so that they can also share this with their community, and we can then engage more to see how they would like to get more actively involved.
Thank you, Kim. That was very good. Yeah, you can be involved just by giving us ideas, tell us what's important to your community, or you can even provide financial support, whatever it is you want to do. But we're really open to that at all levels.
And Dr. Perlmutter, I'll add too, with the Dublin meeting coming up, there is an opportunity then to do travel scholarships, and it's really a wonderful way for the PAGs to be supportive of our young investigators.
Great point. Janet, did you want to say something?
No, sorry. I hit the thing and my picture came popping up. My apologies. Kim said it all.
Okay, thank you. Then Rick Stab made a comment about studies, research being conducted. How do we get that information so we not duplicate efforts and can be supportive? One thing you can do is you can just put in your request to us and we can help you with that. You can always do a PubMed search to see what's been published, but that won't tell you what's going on at the current time. A good question is, and maybe Buzz can answer this, I don't know that we have the titles of the ongoing supported CDAs and pilot projects on a website. Buzz, do we have that posted?
Yeah, Joel, it's a good question, and thanks, Rick, for that. I do think it's valuable to try to avoid redundancy. And if there are 2 or 3 people all interested in the same thing, our preference is to get them together and talk about it rather than have them do it separately with all separate resources. All of our main clinical research projects that are ongoing are listed on our website. And there's a synopsis of what that study is doing and why. All of our pilot and career awards are also listed on the website. The who got it and the title is listed. We haven't written a big synopsis for each one of those, but anyone who looks at it and sees something that they might be interested in can always contact us, or even the investigator doing it, just by going directly to the person who got it and asking them what they're doing or how others might fit in. We get these questions a lot. Joel and myself, and probably other members of the executive committee of the Dystonia Coalition, we get questions from folks outside all the time that, hey, I have this idea to do XYZ. Number one, do you know anybody else who's already doing it? And number two, if you don't, do you have resources that would allow us to make that go faster? And so we answer those questions all the time. But it's a fast moving world. So, every year there are new projects from us, funded from the DMRF, funded from your group, funded from other groups. And so knowing exactly what's going on like right now is sometimes a little bit challenging, even for those of us who are doing it all the time. But it's a great question.
Thank you. So I'll throw out a question. Let me go to a semi-research question, and this really goes back to the wonderful presentation we just heard about TMS and bringing it back to the coalition. Is it one of the issues we talked about is with the focal dystonias, it's hard to do sufficiently large powered studies at one site. How reasonable is it to try, or feasible, I should say, to try TMS or TCDS type studies as multi-center trial, given all the variabilities? Is that something that is worth considering? And is the quality control for that kind of effort possible?
Should I begin?
Yes, please do. It was directed.
Thank you, Joel. I think that's a great question. I've actually been thinking about this question for some time, because I think one of the challenges I've had in my study is that I'm working with a subset population of dystonia in order to maintain a certain homogeneity in the initial analysis. And it was initially a bit challenging to recruit patients because I only had sufficient funds to do it locally and not bring people from Colorado, for example. So I was thinking about how feasible it is. I think the way I've seen some other studies and looking at other models across other neurological diseases that have been rare is that we have to maintain quality control by initially having the planning and the targeting done locally and providing that information to our colleagues at different centers, who can then, and we would essentially set up some similar models for the TMS technology to make sure that the neuronavigation is there. So it is feasible as long as the instrument of delivery of TMS machine is at the location to be able to do it as a multi-center trial. But the targeting would have to be done locally in order to ensure a certain level of consistency across all studies. And then the data analysis, the output can be sent to us to make sure that the ultimate electric field delivered is consistent across all the patients and the amount, so that we could truly do the multi-center trial while maintaining high quality in this. So I think it's feasible. It does involve, as I'm sure you know, with all multiple center trials, a lot of logistical planning ahead of time.
So let me just get one clarification there. You say the planning, you said locally, do you mean centrally? So
yeah, centrally one location,
done centrally and then disseminated to the local sites.
Correct. You have to do the targeting, and a lot of the targeting requires, working together with, the people who've developed it. I think it would be useful to continue to work with the engineers here locally to make sure we do it the same way across all centers. So once the target is developed, then delivery can be easily reproduced at multiple centers. Yeah.
Thank you, because that's something that we could think about as a Dystonia Coalition to help do that. We haven't been involved with any intervention studies, but we do certainly have a substantial infrastructure that could support that.
Certainly something I will be in touch with in the future. I would like to be in touch with in the future.
Thank you.
So looks like Rick Staub has a hand up. Can we get Rick unmuted if Rick would like to speak up directly? There we
Buzz,
go.
I'm sorry, I left that up. I typed in the in my question into the
Okay.
chat. You already addressed it. Thank you.
No problem. Well, now that you're on, you can say whatever you want. So
Yeah, I just want to be clear, like, we want to do more. We want to know what's going on, but to get the publications after the work has been done doesn't allow us to be involved. There was a slide earlier that had a couple of members, PAG groups that were involved in a research that was being done, a clinical trial, but we didn't know that that was even a possibility to support. So how do we know about it beforehand or while it's going on?
A key point, and that's one of the reasons you're right. So if there's a project that we are interested in and we start it and people spend all the effort to try to get it started, then they implement it, then they get the data, then they analyze the data, and then they submit it. It can be years, couple of years before it ever comes out in a publication. And it's in that time you'd like to get involved at the very earliest. That's why we have the list of ongoing funded studies. And that's what you can find at our website, what is going on. As soon as we approve a study, it should go up there. So you'll know what pilot projects are funded this year, but more important, equally important, I would say, is what have been funded last year and the year before, because you'll see that those studies are likely not published quite yet, and they could be at various stages. And so you can see what's been recently done, what's ongoing, and then you can contact those people if that's a particular area of interest. So we really try to be as open and transparent as possible.
Joe, I appreciate that. And, try not to show my ignorance here, but I'm on the website and I see the publications. I don't see what the list you're talking about, unless that's what Kim sent in the chat.
No, Kim posted a list of publications. So I am going to ask Buzz where on the website. So I don't know the answer to your question right now, Rick, and that's an important question.
I'll
Buzz,
continue searching.
website?
I can take it offline. I don't want to take up the time, but
Okay.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
But we will go back to make sure it's easily accessible. And if it's not, we need to try to address that, because that is the intent of having that.
yeah, I think Rick is bringing up a really good point, though. So our studies are listed on the website, but there's a bit of a delay in deciding that we're going to do that study, getting it on the website and getting it started. I think Rick is asking for something a little bit different. That is, what about the study that you haven't started? What about the study that you might have received as part of the pilots or CDAs and looks attractive, but you don't have enough money to fund? And if those projects could somehow be aired in a way that folks in other foundations could see them, then they might get interested. And I think we used to do this in a fairly methodical way, and that is, once we got all the grants reviewed, pilots and CDAs, we would sort of advertise them to all of the foundations that might be interested in those, to see who might be interested in co-funding or pulling one up. And our experience over the years was there were a relatively small number of groups that were interested in actually doing that, and most would rather review their own grants, or some of them just didn't have the wherewithal to be able to fund things like that. And we haven't been doing that lately. now that this question has come through, I realize we haven't been doing that lately. What we have been doing is targeting. So for example, I can pick on Kim since she's here on the line. We got a whole load of grants for some reason on laryngeal dystonia this round, most likely because Kim instigated advertisement through her foundation and to all of her investigators that are interested in that. And so when we got some back that looked very promising, we went back to Kim because that's what the NSDA does. And we shared some of those with Kim to see if their foundation might be interested. We do the same with the DMRF and occasionally with others when we think something is specifically targeted of interest to the group, but all of them we haven't done that with, and maybe it's something we should do more of, but it's a good point.
Right, and Rick pointed out in the chat that he was able to attend the grant reviews of the DMRF, and maybe that's something we should think about, that the sensitivity is there's some investigators who are a little bit concerned about sharing their ideas for new studies broadly, but if it's obviously in their interest to potentially be funded, I think there's a way we can figure this out.
Yeah, we used to rotate members of the review committee among the SAB members of the various groups. So for example, last round we had Jan Teller from DMRF, Kim was also involved. The year before, I think we had Drake Duane from NSTA. The year before, I'm forgetting, but we tried to rotate that member. I do believe that at one point we had somebody from Tyler's Hope, but we haven't had someone for years. So I'm thinking we can next time put Aparna on our volunteer list since
Right.
she's at your place, and that might be a good way to make sure people are aware of things that might be of interest to their local groups.
Maybe we can maintain a list of representatives from PAGs that might want to rotate through that.
Right.
Or even a list that we could send them at least the names and investigators of the applicants. That might be okay too, so everybody could see what people are applying to do.
Right. But it's a really good question. Something we used to do and could easily bring back if there's interest.
Right.
Any of the other panelists want to raise issues about what we talked about, things you liked, things you didn't like? I know this is sort of an open forum mainly for participants who are attending who are not necessarily on the panel, but I think the panelists should feel free to comment too. I see Cindy's eager to start talking again.
I'm always eager.
Good.
No, I want to just reinforce what Joel said earlier about the incredible value of the Dystonia Coalition resources. I don't think people understand how much and how rich that is. And for CDAs, for ideas for CDAs, access it, really access it, look at it, because there's so much there. And I think we don't want to underutilize this valuable information. So again, that's my little thing. That's it.
I think a measure of our success, as much or more than co-authorship, is acknowledgement. And so it's perfectly fine for groups to use our data. We don't have to be co-authors on everything. I'll speak out from my perspective, but we must be acknowledged because that's where the data comes from. And that's a measure of our success. We're here to share the data we've collected at the taxpayers' support. And there's just one comment, and I'll just point out another organization that we haven't commented on is the DMCC. and that's the Data Management Coordinating Center that is now at University of Cincinnati, that has really been quite helpful to us recently, and helping with some tools that are going to help us disseminate the data in a simpler fashion. So I just want to shout out to them for their efforts in that regard. We have something else in the chat, I see. We should, so this is from Kim, we should record a video to explain the different resources. We could do that.
I think it's sometimes easier to watch a video and understand it than just read it. And so maybe that would help clarify what is available and how it can be utilized and such. And that video could just be uploaded to the website.
Easily done.
I think
At least for me to say.
the other
Go ahead.
thing that comes to mind regarding resources is we saved a slot, an actual presentation lecture slot entitled Dystonia Resources Available for the International Dystonia Symposium next year. This is not just our resources from the Dystonia Coalition, but resources that the DMRF and other foundations may have, resources that the NIH has. And so I think better publication of publicity regarding all of these resources is probably useful to help people avoid reinventing the wheel. All right, well, good. I think we have reached almost the end of our scheduled meeting for the group, and I wanted to thank everyone for participating, the panelists in particular, for all the work that goes into setting these presentations up, and GNM and others at the DMRF for helping to make it all work. I think unless there are other questions or comments, we can probably conclude, what, 3 minutes early or something like that, and give people a few minutes back. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate all your time. And then I am going to, sign off too. Thanks everyone. See you next year.